All right, welcome to Paint Talk. In this episode, I'm going to give you 10 ways that you can get better at oil painting. I'm going to tell you 10 things that I see a lot of people do that you should not be doing, and I'm going to suggest what you should do instead. If you're new to the channel, then welcome to Paint Coach. My name is Chris Fornatero, and I'm here to help simplify oil painting so that you can get better faster. Now, if you've watched any of my videos, you know that this is a different setup. I have completely moved, and along with that, my studio. So I'm actually currently in the middle of setting up my studio. Not much is set up. I don't have any of my furniture yet, but once it's all here, I'm sure I'll make a video on how I set up my whole studio and everything. All right, tip number one. Don't have too many colors on your palette. I see tons of people, asking like, oh, what colors should I buy? And they have 12 colors on their palette. And they're asking like, what colors do I mix to get this and that? And oh, I saw this person using that color. I saw this artist using that color. What about this color? Is it possible to get that color without using this color? I feel that when you're starting out, the more colors you have, the more confusing color mixing gets. Instead of doing that, just get the primaries in white. That's red, yellow, blue, and white. Now, more specifically, I personally like to use ultramarine blue, alizarin crimson, cadmium lemon, and titanium white. And there's a lot of benefits of using just the primaries in white. First off, you're gonna develop a better understanding of color, and you're gonna have a good, strong foundation of color mixing. You can get to any color using the primaries. And so by practicing with those and knowing how to get to any color with just those colors, you're gonna understand where all the colors come from. Another thing, it's going to give your paintings color harmony. Since you're pulling from these three colors to mix up any color that's in your painting, all the colors in your painting are going to have harmony. They're gonna seem like they go together. A lot of times, if you have a bunch of kind of crazy, different, specific colors on your palette, start using them, it can make things look strange and certain colors don't seem to go together. And it's hard to make everything work as one. Now, if you're like, Chris, I have no idea how to mix any color from the primaries in white. Well, I can give you the color mixing video from my Foundations of Oil Painting course for free. I'll put a link to where you can get that in the description below. All right, tip number 2 is don't trace. Instead, get better at drawing. Now, I've said in past videos, it's not bad to trace. There is a time and a place, but I'm gonna be honest with you, the quicker and the better you can get at drawing, the better you're going to get at oil painting. There's no way around it. You need to get better at drawing to get better at oil painting. And you're not gonna get better if every single time you have an opportunity to draw, you're just tracing it. I know it's gonna be tough, but I promise you, in the long run, it's going to give you so much more freedom as a painter. It's also gonna help you understand other aspects of painting that are related to drawing, like form. I personally have noticed that the better I've gotten at drawing, the more I understand form, which is huge when it comes to painting. Understanding the form of something, how it's shaped. Drawing is a big part of understanding that. You need to start looking at subject matter and thinking of it three-dimensionally instead of two-dimensionally, which is what happens a lot of times when you trace. And when you get better at drawing, it's going to better your observation skills. You're just going to get better at seeing something and being able to accurately place it on your canvas. You're going to see different angles and be able to replicate those angles, spaces, and shapes. It is such a valuable skill to be able to see something and accurately put it on your canvas. And if you're always tracing, you're not going to develop that skill. All right, tip number 3 is don't let your ego get in the way of you being better. I see a lot of times with people, every single time they sit down to do a painting, they want to be a showcase piece. They want to be something that they can post or sell or this or that. And it's fine to want to show your work and to have something you're proud of and something you can sell. I get that. But there is something to be said for going into a painting with the mindset of it not having to be a success. You have to be willing to make mistakes. You have to be willing to try different things. There's definitely a certain time when I was guilty of this in that I didn't want to do master copies, copy somebody else's painting, because I thought like, oh, like what's the point of that? I want to do my own stuff. I want to create my own, paintings, and what's the point of copying someone else's painting? And I missed out on so much I could have learned from doing those master copies. But I let my ego get in the way and I didn't do them till later on. So instead of letting your ego get in the way, be willing to paint things that people won't see. Be willing to do studies. Be willing to mess up. That's how you're going to get better. All right, number 4, don't just paint one subject. Instead, paint multiple subjects. This can be very helpful. This can help you get over plateaus in your work. A lot of times when I hit a wall with my landscapes, I'll need to go do portraits for a while so I can come back with a freshness. And also, I feel like when you paint different subjects, you're exercising different parts of painting. So certain subjects exercise certain things more than other subjects. Now, I've had students ask me like, oh, like, should I focus on painting one thing because like that's what I want to get known for? It'll help me, sell my paintings. The answer to that is kind of yes and no. I mean, I'll admit that most of the painters that I've seen that have success selling their work pretty much specialize in one subject. They might paint other subjects, but they definitely paint one subject a lot more than other subjects. And to be honest, a lot of times what happens, I feel, is that, a painter paints, a lot of different subjects. They might paint portraits, landscapes, still lifes, and then all of a sudden, one of their types of paintings starts selling a lot. And they're like, oh, I just did a show and my landscapes sold a lot more than my portraits. So they keep painting landscapes because they want to sell more. It's smart. It's just a smart business move. And so they go and they become known as a landscape painter. Now, if you really like one subject and you can just never get bored of it, go for it. I just wouldn't recommend forcing yourself to do one subject just for the sake of making a name for yourself or establishing a brand or something to sell work. I feel like I've never seen that work for somebody who purposely set out to do it. It's only happened to people that would do that no matter if it's sold or not, just because they really like to do that. All right, tip number 5 is don't paint from bad photos. Instead, paint from good photos. So many times I see students work and they're like, oh, what's wrong? I'm like, well, you didn't do yourself any favors with the photo you chose. A lot of times people will choose portrait photos where so much of it is blown out and you can't even see anything, or a landscape where you can't see into the shadows at all. It's just all these just flat darks wherever there's shadows. And I'll admit it, it's hard to find good photos. It's hard to learn what makes a good photo. I definitely didn't know when I started. I have plenty of paintings where I chose a photo that wasn't the best photo to paint from. So what should you do if you don't really know what makes a good photo or not? I always suggest doing master copy, copying other people's work. Now, don't pawn it off as your own. If you post it, make sure you give credit to whoever you copied it from and saying that it's a copy and it's just practice and you're not trying to sell it. And don't sell it. But through copying master painters' work, you're going to get a feel for what makes a good image or a good subject to paint. What is good lighting? What are good values? What's a good composition? If you do enough of them, you'll start developing a feel for it. It's kind of like if you're trying to learn how to swing a baseball bat and you just watch a professional baseball player and you just try and mimic their swing the best you can. You may not know anything about baseball, but just watching and trying to mimic them, you're going to pick up on certain things that work. Hope that analogy makes sense. I wasn't a baseball player, my brother was, but I think that makes sense. All right, number 6 is don't choose a subject to paint because of the details. Instead, think of the fundamentals of painting when choosing a subject. Think about the values, the value relationships, the patterns of light and dark, the composition, how you would simplify this subject, the combination of colors. Are there warm and cool colors? Are there complementary colors? A lot of beginners will be so sucked into detail and they're like, oh, I love all the detail. I like all the little leaves on this tree and every single little board in the barn. And you can paint that, you can make your paintings very detailed, that's fine. I'm not saying doing a painting with a lot of detail is bad. I'm saying that's not what's gonna make your painting good or not. And if you focus on those details and the process of painting is just a way to get to paint those details, you're gonna put those details on a bad foundation of painting. If your drawing's off, your values are off, your composition isn't great, you can go and paint those little details with a needle for a month and it's not gonna look good. You gotta understand and really know how to work those foundations of oil painting. All right, now tip number 7 is don't lie to yourself when a painting doesn't go the way you wanted by saying, oh, that's just my style. Instead, be real with yourself, be honest with yourself. Don't beat yourself up, but understand what you wanted to set out to do and judge yourself on how well you did that and be able to diagnose what you did well and what you didn't do well so you can make those adjustments and get better. Since art can be such a subjective thing, it's so easy for people to take the easy route and just settle for what they can do instead of analyzing their work and pushing themselves to be better. Now, better is going to be different for every single person. You have to decide that on your own. You got to be honest with yourself on what you want your work to be. I'm not saying everybody's work has to be the same or everybody has to have the same goals or want to paint the same way. You need to make that choice and you need to be honest with yourself when you're making steps towards that or away from it. All right, now tip number 8, don't be too hard on yourself. Instead, honor the effort you put into painting. Every single time you paint, you get better, I promise you. The worst thing that you can do is think that whenever you do a painting that doesn't turn out, that it's a waste of time. It's not a waste of time. You're gonna have more paintings that don't turn out well than do turn out well, and that's fine. That's the way it should be. That means you're pushing yourself and you're getting better. I can't tell you how many times I've gone to plein air paint, drive 45 minutes away, hike for another 40 minutes. I've got sunburn, I'm out of water, stepped in an anthill, I'm worried about a mountain lion coming up behind me, and I do this painting and I'm working it for like 2 or 3 hours, and at the end I'm like, wow, I'm gonna scrape this as soon as I get home. And you just have to laugh. You have to say, it's like, oh yeah, it's fine. Like I got better. I wouldn't be able to paint the way I paint now when I go out and plein air paint if I hadn't had all those bad trips out painting. I wouldn't be here. So I think back to all those hard times painting when things weren't going well and are like proud of it. Like I'm proud of myself for going through that and pushing myself and getting myself to where I am now. And even now, things still don't go right every time. I go out and I make paintings that y'all don't see. So don't be too hard on yourself. Honor the effort that you put in. Okay, tip number 9, don't think that you can completely learn painting on your own. Instead, get some instruction. I know from experience, I went years thinking, oh, I can just teach myself how to do this. I taught myself to get this far, I'll just keep going. But when it came time to me actually getting instruction, whether it was online tutorials or in-person instruction, I would just see my skills and just my understanding of oil painting take giant leaps. And I can only imagine what it would be like if I had instruction from the beginning all the way through. And get very comfortable just, painting on your own, not being forced to do anything or to push yourself. So, find a way to get instruction. There's a lot of painters online right now that are giving instruction. Find one that you like and stick with them. If you can, try and get feedback on your work. Even the painters that say they are self-taught, they still got instruction in some form. All right, and tip number 10, the most important one of all, don't put limitations on yourself. Don't ever think that you can't get to a level of painting that you want to. I promise you, if you put in the effort and you put in the time, you will be able to paint how you want. I don't care how advanced it is. I don't care what kind of subject it is. If you really want to do that, you can do it. It will take time, it will take effort, it will take failure, take a lot of work, but you can get there. For some reason, art is put into this category of a thing where you can only get really good at it if you are talented. But the people that are good at painting, they picked up a paintbrush and they were pretty much right there from the start. They have that art gene. They just got something in them that allows them to paint the way they do, and they just see things differently. I don't believe in that. I don't buy that. I think people put in more time or not. All right, that's it for this week's Paint Talk. If you liked the video, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. If you haven't, I highly suggest checking out my Foundations of Oil Painting course. I'll put a link to that in the description below. Also down there's a link to my Patreon page. And if you want to see what I'm painting on a daily basis, you can follow me on Instagram at Forza43. I'm Chris Fornatero here telling you to go get painting.